attacks on Iran. 3 American service members are dead after the U.S. and Israel continue to pound Iran with strikes.
U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran overnight in what's being called a large-scale military operation.
Now to the massive buildup of U.S. firepower in the Middle East. The ships and aircraft moving into position if high-stakes negotiations with Iran fail. CBS's Charlie D'Agata is in Tel Aviv. Charlie?
The clock on the wall of the Combat Information Center reads 7:10 a.m. It is a quiet, humid morning in the Persian Gulf, the kind of morning where the world feels suspended in glass. But on the deck of the USS Spruance, that glass is about to be shattered by the weight of 20 years of geopolitical tension. Without a word of warning to the outside world, a Tomahawk cruise missile erupts from its vertical launch cell. It is a violent, beautiful sight. A pillar of flame that briefly turns the pre-dawn gray into a blinding orange. As the solid rocket booster falls away, a small turbofan engine, no larger than a standard coffee table, spools to life with a predatory whine. The missile drops, leveling out just 50 feet above the waterline, hiding in the clutter of the waves. 4 seconds later, the next cell fires, then the next. Within 90 seconds, 8 missiles are gone, disappearing into the haze toward the Iranian coast. To the northwest, 2 other American destroyers are running the same lethal drill. In total, 25 Tomahawks are now racing their radar altimeters along the wavetops. They are not flying a straight line, they are following pre-programmed routes, designed to thread the needle between Iranian coastal surveillance stations, exploiting every known gap in their radar coverage. The flight time to the IRGC naval bases on Iran's southern coast is exactly 40 minutes. 40 minutes of total, agonizing silence. Somewhere on that coast, an Iranian radar operator is likely drinking tea, staring at a blank scope. He has exactly 39 minutes of peace left before his world ends. But the Tomahawk is a patient hunter. It is slow, traveling at roughly 550 miles per hour. That 40-minute window is a massive vulnerability. A single coastal radar ping, a single alert operator, could compromise the entire southern vector of the attack. Everything now depends on what crossed the border ahead of them. While the Tomahawks are still over open water, a wave of Lucas drones is already deep inside Iranian airspace, performing a maneuver no American weapon system has ever attempted in live combat. At an Iranian Bavar 373 air defense battery, an operator suddenly sees a dozen slow-moving contacts materialize on his screen. They are pushing inland at barely 110 knots. He's confused. These are not the high-speed signatures of jets, or the terrifying arc of a ballistic missile. They look like ghosts. He can't tell which ones carry 40-pound warheads and which ones are just electronic noise designed to spoof his system. He does the only thing his training allows. He fires. A $1 million interceptor streaks off the rail, closing at 3 times the speed of sound.
America has the world's most powerful military. It has the most advanced weapons. But now something interesting is happening. Pentagon has quietly copied Iranian drones. Here's a report.
It tracks a drone the size of a riding lawnmower and turns it into confetti. But there is no celebration in the Pentagon, because that drone only cost $35,000 to build. If this scale of technical warfare shocks you, hit the like button and comment right now to help this video reach more patriots. We need to get this message out. This is the dawn of cost-exchange warfare at an industrial scale. The Lucas drones, operated by the shadowy Task Force Scorpion Strike, were manufactured by Spectral Works in Mesa, Arizona. In a stroke of genius, they were reverse-engineered from captured Iranian Shahd 136. The U.S. is now using Iran's own cheap technology to bankrupt their air defense magazines. Every high-end interceptor that chases a drone cheaper than a pickup truck is one fewer missile available when the 25 Tomahawks arrive in 30 minutes. But the trap goes deeper. Every time an Iranian battery fires, it broadcasts its exact electromagnetic signature to the passive sensors of F-35I Adirs crossing the Iraqi border. The Iranian operator is spending his ammunition and painting a target on his own forehead at the same time, while the Iranian air defense commanders are likely cheering their victories over these slow drones. They are about to discover the true nature of the ghost swarm. What crossed the Iraqi border next was not a $35,000 drone. It was a formation of 12 F-15I Rams, climbing east through the thin morning air. They've been airborne for 90 minutes, tucked behind a screen of F-35s running completely silent. These F-35s are the quarterbacks, passively cataloging every radar emission along the Iranian border while broadcasting nothing themselves. The Rams are flying in an electromagnetic shadow, each one hanging heavy with a Rampage missile slung under the fuselage. At 8:05 a.m., the formation reaches launch altitude over western Iraq. The lead weapons officer in the back seat of the Ram has been watching his display update for an hour. Coordinates have been refined 3 times via Link 16 from an Israeli Oran intelligence aircraft circling safely over Jordan. He confirms the final solution. The pilot squeezes the release. 2,500 pounds of high explosives drop away, and the jet jumps as the weight vanishes. Below the wing, a solid rocket motor ignites, and the Rampage missile punches through the sound barrier in seconds. 11 more Rampages follow. These are ballistic weapons.
Yeah, first time it's ever been used in combat, and they're called Low-Cost Unmanned Combat Attack System, or LUCAS drones. They are one-way kamikaze drones, estimated to cost around $35,000 to build.
Accelerating beyond anything the current Iranian systems can intercept in this phase of flight. A Tomahawk needs 45 minutes to reach Tehran. These weapons need only minutes. That time gap is the entire ballgame. 45 minutes gives an operator time to think, to track, to get authorization. Minutes only give them enough time to watch the impact on the news. The death valley of this operation is now. As the Tomahawks are 10 minutes from the coast, the air defense batteries that the LUCAS drones have been emptying all morning are running out of interceptors. The Ghost Swarm has done its job. It has hollowed out the shield. Now, the sword is coming down. 12 warheads are currently converging on Pastor Street in the heart of Tehran. The Iranian administrative nervous system is about to be severed. The Ghost Swarm was never just about a few cheap drones. It was the opening move in a grand masterclass of electronic and kinetic deception. While the Iranian leadership in Tehran was scrambling to understand why their billion-dollar Bavar 373 batteries were wasting million-dollar interceptors on flying lawnmowers, the true scale of Operation Epic Fury was unfolding in the digital shadows. This wasn't a random surge of violence. It was a surgically mapped execution of a defense network 3 decades in the making. To understand how the Pentagon neutralized Iran's air defenses so quickly, you have to follow the paper trail that started years before the first Tomahawk left its cell. Task Force Scorpion Strike didn't just appear overnight. Intelligence logs and surveillance data now reveal that the LUCAS drone project was a highly classified priority under the current administration, specifically designed to counter the swarm tactics Iran had perfected. By reverse engineering the very Shad 136 drones Iran had exported to Russia and used to terrorize the Middle East, the U.S. turned the IRGC's own asymmetric doctrine against them.
Aircraft carrier of the United States of America. This is the second aircraft carrier that was basically positioned after USS Gerald Ford. Now,
as the morning progressed, the F-35I Adir fleet began the deep dive into the heart of the Iranian administrative nervous system. This is where the F-35's sensor fusion earns every cent of its price tag. The pilots were not just flying, they were managing a massive real-time data web. The jet's computers merged satellite imagery, Link 16 data from every aircraft in the formation, and the passive electronic signals of every active Iranian radar. It was like driving with a GPS that shows every speed trap, pothole, and traffic camera in real time. Except the potholes were surface-to-air missile sites. One by one, the dots began to connect. Every time an Iranian battery fired at a LUCAS drone, it handshook the American sensors, revealing its exact GPS coordinates and the frequency it used to communicate. Within seconds, these coordinates were beamed to the F-15I Rams orbiting in the electromagnetic shadow. Across Tehran, the pattern was clinical. The Ministry of Intelligence, the Atomic Energy Organization headquarters, and the Persian military complex were hit with surgical precision. These weren't random government buildings, they were the hubs of the administrative nervous system. By hitting these specific nodes, the US and Israel were severing the connection between Iran's military leaders and their units in the field. Without those fiber optic nodes and command bunkers, the Iranian Air Force with its aging MiG-29s and F-14 Tomcats was effectively blind and deaf. While the F-35s dominated the capital, the tension was building 500 miles to the south. The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, a floating fortress of 100,000 tons, was making 30 knots into a headwind, launching the next wave of the nightmare. On the flight deck, F/A-18E Super Hornets from the Black Aces were being catapulted into the sky. Their target? Chabahar, Iran-only deep water port on the Gulf of Oman. The Navy's investigation into the IRGC swarm doctrine had identified the PACAP-class fast attack boats as a primary threat.
Widens in West Asia, Iran has released fresh visuals of its missile attack on Israel, the US bases and Gulf countries. These are the images of the movement of firing the Fatah-2 missile.
These 50-foot boats, designed to overwhelm tankers and US warships in the Strait of Hormuz, were tucked away in hardened concrete shelters on the waterfront. But today, they would never reach the water. A Strike Eagle from the 48th Fighter Wing rolled in, designating a shelter with its APG-82 radar. A 2,000-pound GBU-31 JDAM was pickled and dropped. The result was a textbook example of overpressure. The bomb punched through the concrete arch and detonated inside. With nowhere to go, the blast wave blew the walls outward and pancaked the roof onto the swarm boats like a giant fist closing. In 30 seconds, a decade of Iranian naval strategy was turned into scrap metal. As the sun climbed higher, the maze became even more complex for the Iranian defenders. While the Navy dismantled the coast and the F-35s blinded the capital, a different, more desperate fight was reaching its climax in the mountains of western Iran. This was the hunt for the TEL, the transporter erector launchers that carry Iran's ballistic missiles. Finding a mobile missile launcher in the Kermantia Mountains is like trying to find a specific food truck in the middle of Manhattan, except this food truck can move every 20 minutes and is protected by some of the most rugged terrain on Earth. But the US had a secret weapon, the F-22 Raptor. The Raptors were not there to shoot down fighters, they were there to listen. With over 30 antennas embedded in their skin, the F-22s were cataloging every electronic whisper in central Iran.
Advanced hypersonic missile Fatah-2 has made its debut in the ongoing war against Israel. The missile is a better version of the original Fatah-1, featuring a hypersonic glide vehicle,
a mobile SAM battery that thought it was hidden after relocating. The Raptor's ALR-94 system had already geolocated it. An IRGC commander trying to coordinate a counterstrike on a secure frequency, logged, tagged, and forwarded to an F-15E Strike Eagle orbiting 60 miles behind. The authorities were closing in. The Iranian air defense network, which took 40 years to build, was being systematically disassembled piece by piece. The SA-65 Mobile Phased Array Radar, Iran's domestic S-300 killer, finally gave itself away. The commander, desperate to take a shot at the F-35s, switched to full-power continuous track. He was finished the moment he touched the switch. An EA-18G Growler from the Lincoln's air wing flooded his frequency with enough electronic noise to turn his screens into static. Simultaneously, an AG-M88 HARM missile, traveling at Mach 3, locked onto his signal. Even if he shut the radar down now, it was too late. The HARM already knew where he lived. Emission to impact, less than 90 seconds. The Ghost Swarm had transitioned from a trick into a total, crushing reality. Iran's largest conventional weapons stockpile was now exposed, and the coalition was preparing for the final, devastating blow. The Ghost Swarm was the lockpick, but Part 3 is where the hammer falls. At this stage of the operation, the tactical deception of the Lucas drones had matured into a total kinetic nightmare for the IRGC. The Iranian Air Defense Network wasn't just suppressed, it was being physically erased from the map. As the F-35s and F-22s maintained their stranglehold over the electromagnetic spectrum, the coalition moved into the action phase. The total dismantling of Iran's retaliatory capacity. In the jagged peaks of the Kermantia and Lorestan provinces, the hunt for the ballistic missile TELS, transporter erector launchers, reached a fever pitch. This was high stakes, kinetic hide-and-seek. An Iranian crew would emerge from a hardened mountain tunnel, frantic to erect a Shahab-3 missile and fire it toward Tel Aviv before the eyes in the sky could spot them. They had a window of roughly 30 minutes, but the ghost swarm had left them no room to breathe. In a narrow valley, a Shahab 3 was caught mid-sequence. Grainy infrared footage showed the ground crew desperately connecting fuel umbilicals. High above, an IDF F-15I weapons officer waited. He didn't fire immediately. He waited for the secondary fireball he needed the fuel lines connected to ensure total destruction. As the crew stepped back, he pickled a Raphael Spice glide bomb. The warhead detonated at the exact junction of the launcher rail and the truck chassis. 3 tons of liquid propellant ignited in a secondary explosion so violent it whited out the infrared sensors for miles. The valley floor was scorched bare, the launcher was reduced to molten scrap. But the climax wasn't just about missiles. It was about the Shah depots.
In other news and overseas tonight, an American aircraft carrier and 3 destroyers have arrived in the Middle East, a show of force after President Trump warned Iran to stop its deadly assault.
These were the warehouse complexes and hardened hangars packed with nearly 1,000 one-way attack drones, thus very weapons Iran planned to use for their own swarm retaliation. JDAMs and small-diameter bombs walk through these depots with clinical efficiency. In a single hour, 950 drones were vaporized before they could even be fueled. By 9:30 a.m., the administrative nervous system of the Iranian military was officially flatlining. U.S. strikes hammered underground bunkers and fiber-optic nodes, dropping Iran's national internet connectivity to a mere 4% of its normal capacity. The IRGC commanders in the field were now cut off from Tehran. They were islands in a sea of electronic noise, unable to coordinate, unable to retreat, and unable to fight back. The scale of the seizure wasn't measured in drugs or cash, but in capability. When the smoke cleared over the Ministry of Defense and the Atomic Energy Organization, the damage was terminal. Hard drives containing decades of nuclear research were vaporized. The PACAP-class swarm boats were burning under the collapsed roofs of their own shelters. The SA-65 radar systems, the pride of Iranian domestic engineering, were nothing but charred craters. A U.S. official would later state, "We have effectively suppressed their air defenses for the foreseeable future." It was a polite way of saying Iran was now an open book. Every secret, every bunker, and every launch site had been cataloged by the F-22s and F-35s. This operation serves as a powerful patriotic reminder. Freedom requires more than just a flag, it requires constant technological vigilance. The ghost swarm proved that in the 21st century, the loudest victory is often the one that starts with a whisper. We didn't just win a battle, we rewrote the rules of engagement. If you want to